Jimmy Smith's day began like any other. The relentless beeping of his alarm clock nudged him awake, heralding another routine filled with leaky faucets and clogged drains. As a plumber in Toronto, Jimmy was no stranger to unusual calls. But today would be unlike any other. On his way to a job, he caught a glimpse of smoke rising from a nearby forest. His curiosity piqued, he decided to investigate. Navigating through the dense trees, he stumbled upon an unexpected sight. A crashed spaceship, its sleek design alien to anything he'd ever seen. Amidst the wreckage, a figure lay motionless. Approaching cautiously, Jimmy saw that the figure was a young woman with iridescent skin and strange, yet captivating features. She stirred as he reached her side, her eyes fluttering open to reveal an otherworldly, golden hue. Who are you?" she asked, her voice weak but melodic. "I'm Jimmy, a plumber," he replied, unsure of what else to say. "Are you okay? What happened?" "I am Princess Zoraya of Zenthara," she explained, her voice growing stronger. "My ship was attacked by bounty hunters. I need to repair it and hide before they find me." Jimmy was taken aback, but the urgency in her eyes and the sincerity in her voice left no room for disbelief. He offered his hand, helping her to her feet. "You can stay at my place while we figure this out. It's not much, but it's safe." As they made their way back to Jimmy's apartment, Zoraya marveled at the sights and sounds of Earth. Everything was new and strange to her, and Jimmy found her reactions both amusing and endearing. He couldn't help but feel a growing sense of responsibility for her well-being. Back at his modest apartment, Jimmy set up a makeshift bed for Zoraya and began tending to her wounds. She winced as he cleaned a particularly nasty cut, but thanked him with a grateful smile. "Your kindness is unexpected, Jimmy. I will not forget it." "Just doing what I can," he replied, trying to downplay his own nervousness. "So, what's the plan? How do we fix your ship?" Zoraya explained that she needed specific parts, some of which could be found in Earth scrapyards. Jimmy realized this would be no easy task, but the determination in her eyes inspired him to help. They devised a plan to gather the necessary components and avoid detection by the bounty hunters. The next day, Jimmy took Zoraya to a local scrapyard. She marveled at the mountains of discarded technology, her expert eyes quickly identifying what they needed. As they worked, Jimmy couldn't help but notice how out of place she seemed, yet how resourceful she was in this foreign environment. Their scavenger hunt was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Jimmy pulled Zoraya behind a pile of old car parts just in time to avoid a group of menacing figures. The bounty hunters had tracked her to Earth and were now combing through the scrapyard. Jimmy's heart raced as they hid, but Zoraya remained calm. She whispered instructions to him, her confidence steadying his nerves. When the hunters moved on, they resumed their search, working faster now with the threat so close. By the end of the day, they had gathered most of the parts they needed. Back at the apartment, Zoraya began the intricate work of repairing her ship's communication system, while Jimmy did his best to assist. They worked late into the night, their bond strengthening with each passing hour. Zoraya shared stories of her home planet, its beauty, and its turmoil. Jimmy listened, fascinated by her tales and the resilience she showed despite her circumstances. He found himself admiring her strength and intelligence, feeling a connection he hadn't expected. As dawn approached, Zoraya finally finished the repairs. She looked at Jimmy with a mixture of gratitude and determination. "I must send a message to my allies. If they receive it, they can help us." The days following Zoraya's arrival were anything but normal. Jimmy found himself in an unfamiliar role, not just as a plumber but as an unlikely guardian of an alien princess. Despite the gravity of the situation, their days were peppered with moments of humor and mutual learning. Zoraya, although regal in her demeanor, was refreshingly curious about Earth. She marveled at everyday objects and technology, often causing small mishaps. One morning, she attempted to make coffee with an alien gadget, resulting in a kitchen full of foam. Jimmy couldn't help but laugh, her innocence and determination endearing her to him even more. As they worked on repairing Zoraya's ship, the two became an efficient team. Jimmy's practical knowledge of Earth materials complemented Zaraya's advanced understanding of technology. Their collaboration was seamless, each bringing strengths the other lacked. However, the presence of the bounty hunters was a constant threat. Zaraya's explanations about her pursuers revealed the seriousness of their predicament. The bounty hunters were ruthless, and their relentless search had already caused disturbances in the city. News reports of strange figures interrogating locals kept Jimmy and Zaraya on edge. One afternoon, while scavenging for parts in a remote junkyard, they had a close call. Hidden behind a stack of rusted metal, they watched as a group of imposing figures scanned the area. Zaraya's calm composure and quick thinking allowed them to evade detection, but the encounter left Jimmy shaken. The reality of their danger was undeniable. In the evenings, they would talk about their lives. Zaraya shared stories of Zenthra, painting vivid pictures of a world both beautiful and complex. Her tales of royal duties and political strife contrasted sharply with Jimmy's simpler life. Despite the differences, they found common ground in their desire for freedom and peace. Jimmy, in turn, opened up about his own dreams and disappointments. He spoke of his longing for adventure, which had always seemed out of reach. Zaraya listened with genuine interest, her empathy deepening their bond. Her presence had already transformed his life in ways he couldn't have imagined. One night, as they worked late into the evening, Zaraya made a breakthrough. She managed to repair a crucial component of her ship's communication system. Elated, she explained that she could now send a distress signal to her allies. If they received it, help would soon be on the way. Their celebration was cut short when they noticed unusual activity outside. The bounty hunters had intensified their search, and it was only a matter of time before they would come knocking. The sense of urgency grew, but so did their resolve. They knew they had to be prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Zaraya's growing attachment to Earth and Jimmy was evident. She had come to appreciate the simplicity and sincerity of his world. Jimmy, too, felt a profound connection with Zaraya. Her courage and wisdom had reignited a spark in him, giving him a purpose beyond his routine life. As they strategized their next steps, Jimmy realized that their journey together had already changed him. He was no longer just a plumber. He was a protector, a friend, and perhaps something more to Zaraya. Their partnership had brought out qualities in him that he hadn't known he possessed. The night before the anticipated attack, Jimmy and Zaraya fortified their position. They set traps using both Earth materials and alien technology, creating a defensive line that showcased their combined ingenuity. As they worked side by side, there was a silent understanding that whatever happened next, they would face it together. The tension was palpable, but so was their determination. With everything in place, they took a moment to rest, knowing that the next day could bring the confrontation they had been dreading. Yet, in the quiet of the night, there was also a sense of hope. Zaraya's distress signal had been sent, and with it, a promise of help. Morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. Jimmy awoke to find Zaraya already at work, her hands deftly assembling the final piece of the ship's communication system. The makeshift workshop they had created in his living room was cluttered with alien components and Earth tools, a testament to their combined efforts. "We're almost there," Zaraya said, not looking up from her task. "If this works, my allies will receive the signal and come to our aid." Jimmy nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and anxiety. "Let's hope they get here soon. The bounty hunters are getting closer." As if on cue, the news on the television reported another sighting of mysterious figures in the area. Jimmy's heart sank, realizing their time was running out. He turned to Zaraya, her determination undeterred by the looming threat. Her resilience fueled his resolve, and he silently vowed to protect her at all costs. With the final adjustment made, Zaraya activated the device. A soft hum filled the room, and a blue light pulsed from the machine. "It's done," she said, a note of relief in her voice. "Now we wait." The hours dragged by, each minute fraught with tension. To pass the time, they continued fortifying the apartment. Zaraya's alien technology was cleverly integrated with Jimmy's practical know-how, creating a series of traps and defenses that would surprise any intruder. The collaborative effort deepened their bond, a shared purpose binding them together. Their preparations were interrupted by a sudden noise outside. Peering through the window, Jimmy saw the unmistakable figures of the bounty hunters approaching. They moved with precision, their intentions clear. Zoraya quickly shut down the lights, and they both took their positions, ready for the inevitable confrontation. The front door shuddered under a heavy blow. Jimmy's heart raced, but he remained focused, recalling the plan they had meticulously crafted. The door burst open, and the first bounty hunter stepped inside, only to trigger a hidden tripwire. A burst of energy from one of Zoraya's devices knocked him off his feet. Chaos erupted as more hunters poured in, each met with a calculated response. Jimmy used his knowledge of the apartment's layout to outmaneuver the intruders, while Zoraya's advanced weaponry kept them at bay. The battle was intense, but their teamwork and preparation gave them the upper hand. In the midst of the struggle, Jimmy found himself face to face with the leader of the bounty hunters. The alien's cold eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Drawing on every ounce of courage, Jimmy lunged forward, using a makeshift weapon crafted from his plumbing tools to disarm the leader. Zoraya joined him, and together they subdued the remaining bounty hunters. The apartment was left in disarray, but the immediate threat had been neutralized. Breathing heavily, Jimmy looked at Zoraya, her expression a mix of relief and pride. "We did it," she said softly. "But more will come. We need to be ready." Before Jimmy could respond, a new sound filled the room. The communication device they had repaired began to emit a series of beeps and flashes. Zoraya rushed to it, her eyes widening with recognition. "They received the signal," she said, her voice tinged with hope. "My allies are on their way. We just need to hold out a little longer." Jimmy felt a surge of relief, tempered by the knowledge that their ordeal was not yet over. He glanced around the apartment, now a battleground, and knew they would need to regroup and prepare for the next wave. As the initial rush of victory began to fade, the reality of their situation set in. They were two beings from different worlds, united by a common cause and an unexpected friendship. The bond they had formed was strong, and it would be tested further in the days to come. Jimmy looked at Zoraya, her resolve unwavering despite the chaos that surrounded them. In her eyes, he saw a reflection of his own determination. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, their fates intertwined in a struggle for survival and freedom. The sound of Zoraya's communication device echoed through the room, signaling a response from her allies. Jimmy and Zoraya exchanged a hopeful glance before she approached the device, her fingers dancing over its controls. The message was brief but clear. Help was on the way. Relief washed over them, but they knew their ordeal was far from over. Outside, the bounty hunters regrouped, preparing for another assault. Jimmy and Zoraya fortified their defenses, using every resource available. The atmosphere was tense but focused, each of them fully aware of the stakes. As they worked, a deep sense of camaraderie grew between them, born from shared danger and mutual respect. The night was quiet, the calm before the storm. Zoraya took a moment to reflect on her journey, her mind racing with thoughts of her home and the responsibilities awaiting her return. She looked at Jimmy, who was adjusting a makeshift barricade. His unwavering support had been a beacon in her darkest moments. "Jimmy," she said softly, "I want to thank you for everything. You've risked so much for me." He turned to her, his expression earnest. "We're in this together, Zoraya. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing." Their conversation was cut short by a distant rumble. The bounty hunters were making their move. The ground vibrated with the approach of their heavy machinery. Jimmy and Zoraya took their positions, ready to face the imminent threat. The first wave came swiftly. Bounty hunters stormed the building, their advanced weapons lighting up the night. Jimmy and Zoraya fought back fiercely, their coordinated efforts proving to be a formidable defense. Jimmy used his knowledge of the apartment's layout to his advantage, leading enemies into traps and ambushes. Zoraya's alien technology provided a crucial edge, her expertise turning the tide in their favor. In the midst of the battle, Jimmy found himself in a standoff with one of the hunters. The alien was imposing, its eyes cold and calculating. Drawing on the skills he had developed over the past days, Jimmy engaged in a fierce hand-to-hand struggle, finally managing to subdue his opponent with a clever use of a plumbing tool. As the fight raged on, the sound of approaching aircraft filled the air. Zoraya's allies had arrived. Sleek, advanced ships descended, their weapons targeting the remaining bounty hunters with precision. The hunters, realizing they were outmatched, began to retreat. Jimmy and Zoraya watched as the tide turned, relief and exhaustion mingling in their expressions. With the battle over, Zoraya's allies landed and approached. They were a diverse group, their attire and technology distinctly otherworldly. One of them, a tall figure with an air of authority, stepped forward and addressed Zoraya in their native language. She responded with a formal greeting, her demeanor shifting to one of regal command. The leader of the allies turned to Jimmy, offering a nod of gratitude. "Thank you for protecting our princess," he said in halting English. "Your bravery will not be forgotten." Jimmy, still processing the whirlwind of events, simply nodded. He felt a mix of pride and sadness, knowing that Zoraya would soon be leaving. She approached him, her eyes filled with emotion. "I have to go back," she said, her voice steady but tinged with sorrow. "My people need me." Jimmy swallowed hard, nodding. "I understand. Just be safe, okay?" Zoraya stepped closer, placing a hand on his cheek. "Thank you, Jimmy, for everything." She leaned in and kissed him softly, a gesture that spoke of gratitude and unspoken feelings. As she turned to leave, Jimmy felt a pang of loss but also a sense of fulfillment. He had found purpose and courage he never knew he possessed. Watching Zoraya and her allies depart, he knew his life would never be the same.